Welcome to Natural Born Talents. Now, today's subject is a kind of a tricky one, and as usual, a controversial one. Sex, sexuality, karma, and relationships within the matrix. The point of view, as always, will be from outside of the matrix looking in. As I've said before, the matrix is designed to be the opposite of everything that is out in the universe. The matrix was intentionally designed this way in order for you to instinctually try to return to where you are from, where your ancestors are from. You can kind of see this within children, because children instinctively know how to exist in this world. More than anyone, they seemed to enjoy life by being in the moment and not worrying about all the headaches that the matrix has to offer. But having said that, the matrix does have its spiritual traps that people get stuck on. And one of the greatest traps is sex and sexuality. Like race, religion, and political affiliation, it can be used as a weapon. Now, on the other side of the matrix, things like religion, sexuality, race, and the like don't exist. They're not issues. Those things only exist in this world, for the age of conflict, the struggle of conflict. And sex and sexuality is now being used as one of the biggest weapons in political conflict of our time. Now, since I see things from the outside of the matrix looking in, I'd like to introduce somebody who is more grounded than I am in their view on this subject. While he does not go into sex and sexuality alone, he talks much about the globalist movement in his terms and how he's experiencing it. And I would definitely take a look at this video that's listed in the description below. He is a violet soul without question. However, he has definitely gotten control over his ego. He's highly intelligent and a visionary individual, and he sees pretty much what I'm seeing. The only difference is I see the transition as well, and he's more grounded in the way the world as it is at this moment. His name is Douglas Murray, and he has put out the book The Death of Europe and the Madness of the Crowd. I highly recommend taking a look at this if you're interested in seeing the world as it's unfolding. He definitely has the violet view, the visionary view of the world as it is, without the ego, and that is such a rarity to see these days. So how is sex and sexuality on the other side of the matrix? The first thing I would point out is, regardless of who your ancestors are, anyone outside of the matrix do not care what sexuality you have. They are interested in one thing and one thing only: your soul. Can you love, or are you one of these narcissistic brats who sold out for power? So any kind of love-making, any kind of sexual play is just that. It's playful, it's loving, it's moving, it's deep, whether it's heterosexual, bisexual, a group of people, because the energy that they play with is all pure. They don't use the dark, negative energies of the matrix. It has no purpose or meaning for them, because the sex act outside of the matrix is all about nourishing and nurturing your sexuality, not about destroying it. And to achieve this nurturing, healing kind of effect through sex is that they always make love soul to soul. Now, my ancestors don't see anything vulgar or disgusting about sex, because to us it's the natural flow of humanity. You're born with it, you live with it, you learn from it, and you die with it at the various stages of life. And anything that comes along and disturbs that flow is the problem or disease. And that's usually from the matrix, not from nature. So when you reach this level of consciousness while you're in the matrix, sex becomes less interesting because the energy the higher beings can bring to an individual is so uplifting, so nourishing. You don't need to have it as often as you would when dealing with lust. Lust is an addiction to the dark side of sexuality, and I'll get to that in a minute. So most of the indigo souls, the crystals, the lavenders, and the other spiritual souls are more interested in the spiritual side of sex and sexuality because they instinctively know it is more closely aligned to their psyche. That doesn't mean the physical souls or the emotional, logical, linear souls cannot enjoy the same thing. Of course they can. But their needs are a little bit different. They need to work out some things in the world of the physical world, especially the reds, the green tans, the yellows, somewhat the magentas, and somewhat the oranges. Those are physical auras which will have a natural connection to the physical need of sex. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sex within the matrix can be very tricky because the angels have designed all of these spiritual traps with things like lust, rape, S&M, and other sexual perversions. So things like rape, for example, are an attack on a person's soul or psyche in order for the rapist to become a parasite and feed off the negative energy and hostile energy that the victim has to deal with. In other words, if you inject somebody with a bad experience, that person will make a connection to you in a negative way in order to feed off of you. It's a very disgusting game indeed. S&M, on the other hand, is not necessarily a bad thing. S&M, according to the angels, had been something a little bit more along the lines of dealing with mother-father issues. It is connected to sex and sexuality, of course, but that's a role-playing game. I knew a woman who worked in the nightlife in the Japanese side, the seedier Japanese side of Tokyo, and she pointed out some of the games that they play. Just boggles my mind. I don't understand the interest in such games, but the angels pointed out this is actually very helpful because these people are brave enough to acknowledge that they have some sort of fetish they want to work out. And after looking into this a little bit more, I began to understand that. These people are not only working out sexual issues, but they're also working out society issues, parental issues, and the like. Bondage versus freedom, master versus servant, and so on. Lucifer showed me his funny games through things like the movie Rocky Horror Picture Show. But he also pointed out that he was very much a part of Studio 54 in New York, where you could show off your narcissistic needs of fashion display, of the disco scene. You could dance all night, take drugs, and have sex in the corner of the studio. Now, to a Celtic individual, we would find this very unusual behavior indeed, but I see the beauty in it. I see the purpose in it, because people could explore darkness or quirkiness or narcissism all at a relatively safe level. This is not true when it comes to Satan. Satan plays for keeps, and what we're seeing in the sexual movement through the globalists is actually to destroy humanity's sexuality. People who are sensing this, like Douglas Murray, are beginning to get very frustrated. The violet soul is a very passionate, very deep aura. And to have this part of their sexuality destroyed is very frustrating indeed. He, like me, and so many other people have come into this world to experience certain things only to have those things denied by this movement, this globalist movement. And of course, other people are here to work out karma. And the globalist movement is even interfering with that. A lot of people came into this world not only to experience their own path that they chose, but also to work out issues of ego and or abuse that they might have committed in their past life, whether it was intentional or not, in order to undo those issues with those relationships they've had from the past. Now again, a lot of those issues can be worked out, but while the globalist movement is beginning to really interfere with just about everyone's life, it's getting harder and harder to undo those issues. The baby souls have taken over, and when this happens, only their selfish, sick needs are provided for. Everyone else is not allowed to do what they want to do, not allowed to express their own personal sexuality. They're not allowed to say anything. They're censored. They're shut down. Their lives are destroyed, all in the name of one of the darkest, dumbest beings in the universe, Satan. And most of these people just don't know it. They think it's some movement, some cult to join because it's cool, because it's anti-moralism, because it's something they can identify with. And the reason they identify with it is because these people are usually the most soulless people you've ever met. However, in all fairness, some people who are very good people do get stuck in this game and don't realize it, and they will probably figure out to role play some karmic issue or some relation issue somewhere else at another time. So having said that, on the other side, outside of the matrix, in the transition, for example, which I do remember often in my psyche, there are moments I see where my soul and some of my friends' souls are there, and this is what I'm fighting hard to get people to get to, because you don't want to stay in the matrix and where it's going at this time. You want to leave it. But they do have rules to get you out of the matrix, and you cannot have not finished your karma, have not undone the damage you've done in the past, and simply leave. And this could be very confusing because a lot of people are experiencing what it means to be in hell. And I'll remind people that the reason this globalist movement is moving further into darkness is because the globalists themselves are from the inferno. Their reality, their bizarre, sick, twisted reality, is the inferno. That's why they can identify with it. They're connected to it. These are the souls that cannot grow, sexually or otherwise. So they go running around pretending to be things that they are not. And they do this by invading other people's lives to pull them down and push themselves up. This is how the inferno works. In another video, I can go into how hell works and what its real purpose is. It's generally not what you're told in this world. Hell is designed not to necessarily destroy you. It depends on the individual. It's designed to train you away from ego. Some people spend time in hell because they don't want to play with ego. They want to strengthen themselves against ego. And this is one of its reasons. There are others, which I'll go into in another video later. But things connected to sex or lust, as it is with all the other sins, are one of the quickest ways to get into the inferno. So if you want to stay out of it, be sure to be very careful with your sex and sexuality. At least that's my understanding of the rules of this world. It really will depend on the individual. Now, getting back to my ancestors, their lovemaking is so powerful, so meaningful, you don't need it as much. It's so nourishing and so meaningful and so deep that it reaches a part of your psyche where the drive for sex is much lessened. Whereas pornography is a cheap thrill, and the reason people get addicted to pornography, and you shouldn't be ashamed if you are, is because it's an empty feeling after you come down from such an experience with pornography. It's designed that way purposely. It's dealing with the issue of lust. Everybody in the pornographic films look like they're free, but they're not. They're dealing with a very low-level energy of lust. And that's nothing bad in itself until you get addicted to it, or it starts interfering with your daily routine, for example. Like I said, everything about the Matrix is the opposite of what it is out in the world. Satan has taken all the fun games of sex and lovemaking and turned it into vulgar games for the elites only. And when you see all this hush-hush with the upper echelon of the elites and all the scandals and stuff, well, you'll know you're connected to the dark side of the matrix. So for an easy comparison, everything dark and ugly in the matrix is designed by the darkest and ugliest of angels and devils like Satan, and the reverse of it is beautiful, fun, playful, loving, meaningful, romantic, spiritually enlightening, and so on. And as long as you treat sex that way, nobody cares what your sexuality is on the other side. They could care less. It's all fun and games. You have your preferences, you have your ways of nurturing yourself. They'll detect that, and they will offer games and things for you to emotionally, spiritually, sexually move forward, whatever that may be. But as we experience the Matrix, even George Orwell had pointed this out, that if this trend continues, those who get stuck in the Matrix and have to stay in it will become sexless. They will have no sex, no orgasm. You'll just exist. And he's probably right. The sexual exchange of energy between two people can cause other people to be jealous. It's where jealousy comes from, is that you're giving energy to one person more than another through sexual play, and this can cause weaker souls to become jealous. Whereas on the other side, they would just simply invite everybody to play. Nobody's left out. Again, the Matrix moves rather slowly because it's designed that way. It's for the angels to try to nurture and treat people away from destructive behavior. However, we're seeing such a shift towards destruction, total destruction of society. Something new may come forward, like the transition. Hopefully it does. But for those souls who refuse to let go of the Matrix because they're just too used to it, it has served them in many lives to their advantage, and they don't want to let it go. And the angels understand this, but on the other hand, they're trying to kick them to move them to grow, because they can't just keep spoon-feeding them their lives, because those souls will not move forward. They'll become over-dependent on the Matrix. And of course, we're seeing the result of that now. And getting back to the moralists often judge what they perceive to be decadent behavior. And more often than not, they are simply hiding decadence within the realm of denial. They're telling other people you shouldn't do that because they instinctively know that it will lead to some trouble somewhere down the line, but at the same time, they're hiding their own dark skeletons in the closet and pretending everything is okay. And it gives them the self-righteous right to condemn you for what they're actually either doing or hiding. Thus, we're seeing such hypocrisy throughout the world at this time. So again, natural born talents is really about understanding yourself, your sexuality, your aura, the best you can, so you can work out these issues of karma and relationship so you can move on when the transition does come along. If you get stuck and you start using your sexuality for political advantage or for condemning someone else on the moralistic side and so on and so forth, you could get into trouble with the collapse of the Matrix and you could get lost in it. I don't recommend it. But as the angels constantly point out, that's an individual choice. You cannot force somebody to do good. They have to will it. But you can force somebody to do bad, and that is unfortunate. But on the other hand, you can make yourself stronger when people start pushing bad on you by finding ways to fight it or get around it the best you can. So we're stuck with the dilemma of condemning somebody for their sexuality, for their race, for their political affiliation, for their religion, versus the people who are truly corrupt, the baby souls, the ones that are causing so much harm through this globalist movement, which are all the smokes and screens to keep you confused. So that's why I point out on the other side, nobody cares what you practice. Nobody cares what sexuality you are dealing with. Nobody cares what your tastes are, what you do in bed. They all encourage you to practice healthy lovemaking. And that's the key, because the Matrix is designed with negative energy, low energy, versus all the higher energy which is on the other side of the matrix, and seldom, if ever, expressed in this world at this day and age particularly. So if you don't want to deal with the negative side of sex and sexuality within the matrix, I do recommend staying away from it, because it will just bring you down. It's an empty feeling that I have personally just given up on. But on the other hand, I don't condemn people who want to explore it, especially now, because this is going to be the last chance you're going to get exploring something like Lucifer's game. I would just warn you not to get stuck in it or damaged by it. Because in the transition, these issues do not exist. You have a certain need, you have a game you want to play, it's created for you. And the higher beings make suggestions and alterations in order to help feed your psyche along. And when you have one of these experiences in the matrix, it will keep you up and happy for weeks. And as you experience this, things like pornography and the like will seem very trivial and meaningless. So if you wish to have such experiences, you have to be very careful, because it is not allowed in this world at this time unless you meet certain criteria for obvious reasons. You have to have an understanding of lust, because if you have an experience like this, you'll get confused and you won't see the difference. You have to have your partner close to your psyche or above. It cannot be somebody who's lower. They'll just misuse the energy as well. You have to be in a place, an environment that is suitable for such a game. You have to have permission from your ancestors so it doesn't screw up your timeline or your experience within the matrix. So if you go look for it, be careful, because there are a lot of cults out there as well who deal with this game. And like all cults, they'll just make things worse in the long run. So the best advice I can give in this issue is simply, no matter what their sexuality is, choose your partner carefully. If you can, make scenarios for you and your partner, or partners in some cases, where you can play games that nourish everyone. Easier said than done, I know, because the Matrix is designed that way. I've had this experience in the past, and as fun and as loving and as passionate and as high energy as it was, the people around us lost their frigging minds because it was outside of their experience. They couldn't understand it. Either that, or they were so jealous that they had to just find some way to tear it up, and so they called on all the dark angels and demons and things from the inferno to jump my bones. And of course that led to disaster. However, it doesn't really matter in the long run, because the people that I'm playing with, if they have been honest with themselves and continue to practice those nourishing games, then we'll just see them on the other side of the matrix when the time comes. So many of you will be blessed if you have such experience, but be careful with it, because it will trigger the weaker souls around you, and that's always the problem within the matrix. The reason you're seeing such attacks on humanity as whole, from the lowest of low within humanity, is because they are jealous. And for them to get any kind of experience outside of staring into a computer or phone or the like, they feel they have to sign on to this globalist movement, which is destroying humanity at its core. So having said that, I would like to point out again, I don't speak for the angels, I don't speak for any particular religion. These are the games we like to practice because we see the logic in it. We don't see the logic in the angel world. Most of the deeper people I know from this world have left, even including my stepsister, who was taken out of the matrix at a very early age because of this movement that was whispered into my consciousness way back in the 90s that this was coming. That many people's spiritual growth, their paths in life and stuff, would be altered and destroyed by this globalist movement. But we all have to be patient and try to work out our issues with our family and family members until the transition comes. Because once the transition comes, those baby souls, those souls that cannot move forward in any way and form, will be left in the dark side of the matrix, and the rest of humanity who want to learn these other games that are beginning to show up at little points here and there will be allowed to stay to enjoy those games. Well, that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you in the next video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below. And thanks again for watching.
It's gotten so bad, you can't even eat Weetabix. You know, when you're doing it.